Welcome to Creative Leadership with Heart, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of creative leadership. I'm your host, Rico Nasol. Join me as we explore the transformative impact of heart-centered leadership in today's creative and design organizations. Hey, what's up, all? Thanks for checking back in. Today, I've been looking forward to this chat. A good friend of mine. This is Andy Lerma. He is the global design lead at Netflix. Thank you for joining us today. I know you're busy. I know firsthand how busy you can be, so really appreciate you taking the time with us. Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, just want to jump in. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey
Mhm,
as a creative,
mhm.
what attracted you to design, and then how did you know that it was the career
Mhm.
for you?
Wow, great question. I guess since being a child, I was an athlete kind of artist. And when you're an athlete artist, they usually kind of say pick one because you can't really back then in the earlier days when things were a little different. They cut the coaches and just mentors just made you pick one. And so I chose to be an athlete, although I knew that being in arts and just the visual design, because knowing that I had this visual, you know, gift, I should say, that I was like, well, maybe someday I'll use it, but right now is not the time because I need to focus on sports. So I played sports my whole life. And then I don't know, one thing leads to another where you're like trying to figure out your world of after high school, you're like, what am I going to do? And where am I going to go? And just I guess you could say that a few things. I landed myself in a job as a runner for TV shows like Herman's Head, Empty Nest, long time. That's aging me pretty bad. And I worked on these shows for a few years, and there was this thing called hiatus where you go on, I don't know, and I was like 6 weeks of paid time, and I was like, well, this is cool, but what am I going to do? And the opportunity fell in my lap where I wasn't really happy with what I was happy, because I wanted to be a cameraman and I wasn't related to so and so to become a cameraman, and so I had no family members. So I was like, I need to find an alternative route because it's going to be really hard to become a cameraman. And I don't really think the set thing was for me. It didn't feel the passion. So then I started to reflecting and just asking myself, like, what would make me happy? And then the irony that a friend of mine got a job as an editor, and they were starting a print group, and he said, hey, they have internships, if you want to, and I was like, and I already went to school for film and television, so I was like, that's where I want to go and this is what I want to do. So this is like a full pivot. But I was like, well, I'll give it a shot since it's only an internship, and since they're willing to look at my book without having any art experience, why not? So I went on the interview, and they were like, yeah, just come on in a few days a week and help us out. And so it turned into that, and then it turned into, hey, we really like you, can you hang out and just for a full-time job? I was like, yes, I'll take it. So that was the journey. The journey was, of course, not necessarily right into design. It was like mounting comps on boards and just organizing. And back then it was like we burned photography on CDs. So I know it was pretty wild. There was no servers. If there was, it was more about like just having a few things on there, because I think it was like only like 100 megabyte servers back then. So which is silly. And it just so happens I worked with all these amazing art creative directors or art directors. And so I had the opportunity to where I was like, oh my gosh, I can go to school here on the job. And so I stayed late for years. And that's where I realized, well, this is really where I want to be. Because it really fed me as far as like soulfully. And I saw the passion that it really ignited for my interest. And I was like, this is really where I'm excited to be. And so that's where the path started at 1999. That's a long time ago.
Nice. I
Um,
mean, and
yeah,
I've been lucky enough to see it firsthand, right? Like I
yeah,
saw you, I mean, you were at Lionsgate and you did amazing work with the John Wick franchise. So if
yeah,
anyone's listening, if you're wondering who's responsible for the John Wick franchise, you're listening to them. Um, and
yeah,
then yeah, we met at Netflix, and you where you're at now.
yeah.
But I think one of the things that I wanted to help tell is there's an interesting path that you had. So that
Mm,
was sort of like the professional path, right? So like you were a runner, and then you did this, but there were some other challenges that you had to face
yeah.
growing up as a kid, and even
Mm,
through, you know, adolescence into teenage into your adulthood. So I
hmm.
know some folks would love to, if you could share your experience and some of the challenges you faced growing up?
Absolutely. Um, that was second grade when I found out that I had a learning disability, and it wasn't called dyslexic back then. They just said you have a hard time reading, so you need tutoring. And so that's what I had. They stuck me in a small room, and I had tutoring for my whole life, until high school. And that's when I started to realize and that okay, I learned how to overcompensate, and so I think the overcompensating helped me figure out and get the once I knew I had the passion for something, then I knew that I can learn whatever it is that I can learn, which should be Photoshop or Illustrator or design, because I knew if I loved it, I would fall in love with it, and I would treat it the same way I treated sports, and of course, being a visual person, because you're a designer, it just felt natural. So there wasn't a lot of email reading or notes. It was more verbal and just like visuals. You know what I mean? Oh, that's what we want to do. Okay, then I'll design something like that. So knowing that I had this like a little bit of, let's just say, limiting situation. I just kind of I just navigated through always like finding myself into, like I said, overcompensating or finding people that were really helpful. Maybe it read stuff to me, but now we have programs called Speechify, which now they can read long emails to me or long memos. So, and iPhones now have a speech to text, which is kind of awesome, or, that you can actually hear long emails. So there's a lot of course, with this, I want to call it disability, this superpower. It's given me like another perspective and another lens to look through, to just be, to really be grateful for the opportunities that I get. And it's one of those things that yes, I did have this issue, and yes, it gave me a lot of I want to say trouble, to where I always felt different and didn't really feel part of. So I did fall into the years of early design, where I was using alcohol and drugs as a gateway to escape, and didn't know who I was because of all the traumatic experiences that you have as a kid. You don't know how to really face, difficulties. And so that was my outlet, is to, drink and use. And also too, you become really good at designing, thinking that it's all based on how effed up you were, or how high you can be to create something cool. And I was honestly really afraid to get sober, because I knew I needed to get sober at some point. But it's like, am I still going to be able to design? Can I still have that cool, aesthetic, and just like think differently? And I was really scared. It was an honest fear, Rico. And at that point, I said, it's time to get sober. And whether it changes my career or not, it was an opportunity for me to reflect and really build a new me. And little did I know, I was going to build a whole new version that I really should have been. As one of my sponsors says, is like, you're going to become your authentic Andy, I promise you. So, and on that journey, you find yourself and picking up a lot of amazing tools along the way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say you blew away like who you probably thought you could have been,
Yes,
right? And I
absolutely.
love that like it's a superpower. Like your learning disability wasn't something that held you back.
Hmm.
What it did is actually opened up new perspectives for you,
Yes.
which I love that like framing of that, because some people would
Hmm.
lean into that like, oh, woe was me kind of thing.
Hmm.
But you turned it around and said like, okay, well, I just have this thing I have to work through. Let me figure how I can use it to my advantage, right? And you found
Absolutely.
every way you could to turn it into an advantage, and I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, and I'd like to talk more. Like, so what were the things that you were, because you're an amazing creative. I knew you post recovery,
Yeah.
right? So I
Yeah.
didn't really know you before, right?
Hmm.
So what were those things that you were afraid of, and like how did your mind shift to like,
Hmm.
no, I don't need that anymore?
Yeah. I mean, they always say, you're ready to surrender when you're ready. And I knew my life was, it was pretty much burning to the ground at that point. And I was like, well, if I don't change things, then I'm probably not going to be able to be a good father to my amazing little daughter that I had at that time. And that was part of the catalyst, is having that child. I get all sensitive when I talk about her, because that was partly why I got sober, is because I started to see her, And I was like, okay, I can't continue this lifestyle if I want to be a good father, or, so I had to make a choice, you know, and I remember like knowing whatever the consequences were or the circumstances would become, I was willing to take that chance and just and just say, you know what, let's dive into this and figure out who I really am, and deal with this, limiting situation that I have, but make the best of it. And so that was when the beginning of the end started. You know what I mean? The new chapter where I get to lead a new life. That's why I now say I'm living in gratitude. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's truly amazing.
Yeah, I was gonna get into that next. You beat me to the punch because this is
Yeah,
called
yeah,
creative leadership with heart, right? And the
yeah.
thing that stuck out, one of the things, and I've told you this probably 100 times already, that what set you apart from almost any other creative that I interviewed, because
Mm,
creative in Hollywood can be toxic. I
yeah.
mean, you've seen it firsthand at Lionsgate. I've seen
Hmm.
it firsthand working with like outside folks. But when I met you, you were one of the most humble, most like down to earth, and you do come from this place of gratitude.
Hmm.
um, can you talk about how, one, what got you to that mindset, and two, how has that helped you in your creativity and like in your career so far?
Oh, great question. I For the first 12 years, I spent working at agencies and having different bosses and different creative directors that directed you in a way that probably wasn't the most pleasant, or nowadays would be definitely considered offensive, or other names. And so I had realized, this is probably not where I want to be, because if this is the way it's going to be for the rest of my career, this is not going to be fun, or what really I signed up for, as far as like feeling empowered to be my authentic self, but also feel like I'm being grilled all the time from a creative director, or the toxicity that you mentioned, because it is so toxic in that environment. So I was seeking something else. And so when this opportunity, and I knew the streaming service was kind of going somewhere, and I was like, and it was 2013, and I was like, you know what, I see something different than everyone, because I was working on theatrical, marketing at this point, and doing TV shows. So I was working at BLT at the time, like working on Batman, and just like Shutter Island, and Benjamin Buttons, like all these really big shows. But again, it's like you weigh do you want to live in a toxic environment and go to therapy every day because of how you're feeling, or do you want to work in an environment that really kind of embraces you and makes you the best person that you are? And I saw that streaming and home entertainment was, in digital service creative, which is like creating the artwork for the media on streaming services. I was like, you know what, and I saw that it paid the same too. So I was like, it's a lot less stress and the people are nicer. So I'm in. So I took this opportunity, and I applied for, or I got, I paneled for an interview at Lionsgate, and they hired me, and everyone's like, dude, you're going backwards. Why are you going to that home entertainment when you've been working on theatricals? Like, because I see something that no one else is seeing. I know there's going to be like a digital like floodgate that's going to open up someday, because I see that's where the marketing is headed. It's going to just be all online. And I didn't know that Netflix was going to be what it was, or Hulu, or Apple. I did know that I saw a world of digital just being the same component as marketing out of home. And so that's where I just took this challenge, and I guess I leaned into risk, and leaned into my intuition, and also I wanted to be happy. That was the main goal, is to just find my happiness, and the pursuit of happiness is, they call it. And I got to Lionsgate, and it was like a breath of fresh air. It was like I had an amazing boss. They gave me the freedom to pick jobs that I wanted to. I remember when they offered me the John Wick job, and everyone was like, "It's Keanu Reeves." Who I was like, "I'll take it. I love Keanu." Point Break, yes. Um, so then it just so happens that IP blew up, and I didn't know it was going to turn into three episode series. And I was going to be the guy behind all the home entertainment, and the road show, and all these amazing assets that we got to create, the steel books, and the special packaging. It was amazing. And so I guess you could say it's timing, luck, or intuition, but it might have been just following your heart, I think. And that's where I always say, follow your passion, and the rest always follows. That's what I tell my daughter. So
Yeah. And it's amazing, right? Because I have to ask, like, how did you like
mhm.
Batman, Shutter Island, John Wick, all the things that you named, you could have easily gone, you could have an ego the size of Hollywood, right? For the things
Yeah.
that you've done. How do you maintain your humility and your humbleness?
Mm,
And what would you say to folks coming up
mm.
about that?
Great question. It wasn't until I got into Lionsgate where I really started to self-reflect and really kind of dive deeper into like finding my true self and my authenticity. And I got this, I started to realize what was missing from from me. And so I started to really like dive into self-help, self-help books and mentor, other designers. So as we brought in internships, I was the one guy who always raised my hand to help out these newcomers. So I started to realize giving back was a huge proponent to how it made me feel good. And so I started to mentor, internships or just junior designers that were coming in. And so it was something that really kind of fed me another way than even just being in a great and positive environment, and so I just saw that as an opportunity again to grow even more. And that was, I think, the way to always keep me grounded and humble, as you say. And I think it takes some experiences where you get some feedback. You're like, some things need to probably change, because because when you're raised or mentored, the way that you're trained, you have to understand like it's a different culture now. And the way we train and look at our younger generation, it's a different environment where they, when they handed me a dinner and said, okay, you're working until 2 in the morning. I was like, okay, no problem. You can't do that now. It's a different environment. It's a whole different, world that we live in. And so I started to realize, I was like, wait, maybe some of the tactics that they taught me aren't really valid nowadays. And so I really started to reevaluate who I was and how I am as a leader and change those aspects. And so that's when a lot more change started to happen, which we can get into.
Yeah. We can get into that. One
Yeah,
thing I
yeah.
wanted to ask too is, when just not that long ago, a few months ago, you were, I'm so glad you came on to tell your story, because this story
Mm,
I think can help so many people out, whether
mm,
it's, they're facing similar challenges slash superpowers,
mm,
things in their lives. Um, I think it's important, and you were hesitant to share your story, to
mm.
share your superpower, to share your gifts. Where did that come from? That hesitation?
Wow. Well, it's something that you're ashamed of, It's because I'm biracial, so I'm Mexican Irish. I should probably mention that before. My pronouns are he, him, his. Um, and so I never felt like I fit in. And so having a learning disability always made me feel like not really a part of. And so I've always pushed it down and was ashamed of that. And so I didn't really want to tell anyone because I felt like it was something that I was always, hiding, and until we started talking in our leadership, one-on-ones, I started to realize, well, I'm finding my authenticity and I'm okay for who I am. And I'm gonna and until we kind of discovered that maybe announcing it could be more beneficial to you and help others. And I was like, really? And that's when I think that the white light or some sort of shift in the universe happened, where all of a sudden now all these opportunities for me are available now to help others and kind of tell my story, and just like and just be proud about it, And so now I'm finally excited to share my story and, you know, happy to say that I've been living with dyslexic and this learning disability for, the last, 49 years. And, and it's okay, because I know that there's still opportunity for me. And when you have companies like Netflix and Lionsgate, that embrace you for who you are, and just see you as the person. As you said, I brought in gratitude into my interview. That's amazing, because that's one of the things I don't think any really leadership would ever, say to you. So it's always amazing to hear that, feedback. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've like I would like want to congratulate you, and I've congratulated you a ton. I mean, just as just you as a person and how far you've come just in general.
Hmm.
Like some people like who are probably listening to this hope to have a career as successful as yours.
Yeah,
Um, so I want to segue now into what you're up to now, because some of our conversations, you're doing a lot more work within the community. So can you kind of share? You told me a little bit about the ERG stuff. Can you share that and some of the mentoring and things that you're into now?
absolutely. Can I hate to do this, but my dog is they're both at the
Oh
door.
yeah,
They're wanting
yeah.
out. Can I
Go
let them
for
out
it.
real quick? Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Okay, come on.
I'm sure everyone listening won't mind when Andy lets his dogs out.
That's a good one. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
They kept making noise and scratching. I was like, okay, I'm gonna probably have to let them out eventually. Um, yeah, so it's now I guess the tides have turned and the shift is because I've announced this, the opportunity where people are, would you be open to speaking about your story? And so I was asked to speak at our ERG group to tell my story, publicly to a ERG group at Netflix and express, my journey. And I was able to say it proudly. And it's something that I guess you could say that you've given me our discussions and our one-on-ones have given me the empowerment to just really be proud of who I am. And now like all this all of a sudden now I get like this opportunity to be available to partnership with Making Space, which is another group that is creating opportunity for the accessibility community, and I get to be a spokesman and help them and understand what design means. So it's an amazing, it's just like you open the door and all the opportunity starts to happen. It's just a matter of like pushing open the door. I think that's the key, and you helped me do
Yeah.
it. So thank you.
No, it was like, I mean, this is what I used to tell folks on the team, right? When I was
Mhm.
there is
Yeah.
I will present every opportunity. I'll open all the doors for you. You
Hmm.
have to walk through it,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
all I did with you was really open the door. You walked through, and all of this stuff is because of you,
Yeah.
right? Like all the things that you're doing is because you're willing to share and you
Mm.
are wanting, you have a desire to help. So I can open doors, but you burst through it. You like jumped through it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm proud of you for that.
Thank you.
And there's another thing that you're also working on that you didn't mention with some underrepresented groups. Can you talk about how you're trying to get more exposure for some groups in Hollywood?
Absolutely. We're Netflix is collaborating with Otis College, and we're creating a pipeline for underrepresented communities that are people of color and also all demographics. It just so happens that a lot of people of color are not in the Hollywood business, and so or designers, for that matter, or work in advertising. So we created this curriculum with Otis College and Netflix where they brought in 18 candidates that are actually in a 14-month program. And they're going to have a paid internship for 6 months after the curriculum of 14-month program, and they get their opportunity and their life dream to come through, and we get to actually be their mentors actually as they go through the process. So not only do we get to be a part of it, but we get to also help curate their their dream and just help them understand what they're going through and just like be there as a support system. And it's just again it's an amazing opportunity because when you make yourself available, it just like I guess the opportunity of other people start to catch wind and like, hey, would you like to be a part of this? And they're like, yes, of course I would. So I'm just all about saying yes right now, and just I and then you look back and like, oh my gosh, I told my wife, I was like, I realized that I'm a part of like around 5 different things right now and all these different avenues of giving back, of being of service, and I've been wondering why I've been feeling so great, and I'm not doing it to feel good for the world. It's more or less for to what's feeling good in here, and it's just like it's really kind of fulfilling the cup, if you know what I mean. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna share something I didn't ask you, but I'm sure it'll be okay, right?
Absolutely.
When we first started working together,
Mm.
your goal was like a particular title or a
Yes.
particular job. And
Yes.
one of the things, and the reason why I wanted you on here is
Mm.
not only just to tell your story, but
Mm.
you are the epitome of like leadership shows up in so many different ways than a title, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to be a manager or director, all these things. Like leadership really is how you carry yourself, how you bring others with you, how you make
Mm-hmm.
everyone around you better, right?
Yeah.
And if you asked me, you know, now what you wanted then, I would say absolutely you're in the leadership role you were made to be in,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
are like helping so many people get
Mm-hmm.
access. You're
Mm-hmm.
helping with equity in Hollywood. You're helping in so many ways. And
Yeah.
so I'm so happy to be part of your story, even if it's just a little piece of it, because of the impact you're having in the creative community. So
Oh,
thank you for from me and from everyone in the creative community.
oh my gosh. Thank you. I mean, like I said, it's I just feel like when the student's ready, the teacher appears, and I feel like with all passions, it's an old saying, but it's so true. It's because when you're open for the opportunity for you to grow, then that challenge appears, and it just you challenged me to just tell my story, and just and also like you don't need that title change to make that announcement, you know what I mean, because you're already doing what you do. In fact, I was just telling somebody that story today because because he's the person that I help kind of bridge the gap between him and our marketing team. And I was like, and I remember that story because it's like you don't realize that you're already doing something until someone actually points it out, and you were happen to just call it out what was happening already. And I was like, wow, you're so right. I don't even need this like title change to really call myself a leader or grow, because I'm already there. And so it's just it's amazing when you get to realize that, and be a part of that realization,
Yeah.
So
Um, so yeah, we're getting close on time. I could talk
yeah.
for another hour if we could.
Yeah.
But one more thing, and
Yes.
then so this is if you've already provided a lot of advice, but if
Mhm.
you had a piece of advice that you wanted to give to
Ooh.
creatives coming up, what is the probably biggest piece of advice you would give to folks?
Wow, there's so much, but I think one of the key components is don't chase the check, chase the passion. So follow your passion and the money will always come. Like it doesn't matter what are you doing. It doesn't have to even be in creative. It can just be, if you want to work at a department store, then you could be a manager, or you can, you know what I mean? You can do well in that fashion. So I always say to my daughter is like, just don't follow what everyone else is doing. Follow what's best for you and what makes you happy, because then your work doesn't feel like a job. I mean, because when people say like, "Why do you work so hard?" I was like, "Well, this doesn't really work for me. I love doing this. It's fun. I
Yeah.
mean, what other job on the planet can you say like, I love what I'm doing every day because I get to work in Photoshop and communicate with amazing colleagues? So
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, people will say it's cliche, but it's been around for a reason because it's
yep,
true. Nobody on their deathbed will ever say, "I wish I worked more," or "I wish
mhm,
I made more." They're
yeah,
gonna say, "I wish I spent more time doing this. I wish I
mhm,
experienced more," right? The things that they love to do,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So, as cliche as it may sound, yeah, you do something you love, the money will come. I mean, it
yeah,
will,
mhm,
and you will adjust. We're humans, like, right? Humans are just like water. We'll find a way,
yep,
right? Do you
yep.
really need to make $800,000 a year when you're just fine making $200,000 a year? I don't know. I'm just putting it out there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. No, that's it. I mean, you find, and that's just it. Is like what's important to you is, I guess, and also because when you find what's important to you, the rest of the things just kind of fall into place. I've noticed. I remember. I mean, I mentioned my wife, and I mentioned her because I always give her partial credit of who I am and what I become, because of the fact that when you find your partner that compliments you and raises the bar with you, then there's constantly like, and not in a competition way, but more or less like that's amazing. I love the growth that, there's no jealousy or enviness at all. It's like, I want to be part of that. I remember when she was sponsoring like 8 girls. I was like, well, maybe I should sponsor like, 4 guys. Cause I only have 2 guys right now. Maybe I should, hire, sponsor more, so, and she's always challenging herself. And so it really kind of raised the bar for me to always challenge myself and believe in myself too. Cause when you're raised from a certain demographic or a certain culture, like it's like you're kind of meant to just stay in your place and not be heard and not have a voice. And so I think with my amazing partner, I think it's helped me build my voice and build my brand, you know what I mean, and who I am. So that's
Yeah,
the part I think that's important.
absolutely. And where can people find you? So they've heard a little bit about your story.
Yeah.
They know what you're up to. Now, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn, or we can give them my email. It's Andy Lerma at Gmail, or there's a Lerma at Netflix. I'm always open. I answer every emails. I don't ignore people, because I've had that happen to me. So I was like, whenever I get in a position where people are going to cold email me, I'll respond. And I've made a point of that. And yes, I'm busy, because I will be answering emails till probably later than I should. But it's something I made a pact to myself, is to always pay back and give back. So again, another word of advice is, whatever you put in is what you get out. So it is what it is. And the more you give, the more you get. And that's just the way it works. It's a cycle of the universe. And I love putting myself in that ecosystem.
Yeah, 100%. I 100% agree. The energy you put
Yeah,
out is the energy you get back. So if
absolutely.
what you put out is passion and love and gratitude, that is
Hmm.
what you will get back. If you put
Absolutely.
out hate, unfortunately, that's what you get back too.
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, is there anything else? One last word, and then we'll wrap up
Other
and let
than,
people.
other than saying thank you for having me come on your podcast. I've always been a huge fan. I just to end with, I remember our interview. I was like, oh my gosh, you were the one person I was like, did I bomb this? Because you had such a poker face. And it was like, and little did I know, when you told me how you felt, I was like, wow, that's amazing. So, never go into interview and just like think you're going to bomb. Just do your best, and that's all that matters. And you never know what the outcome's going to be, because and look where we're at. So
Yeah, yeah.
so
In my defense, you probably learned after a while that I'm pretty even,
yeah,
right?
yes,
No,
yeah,
I'm never too high and I'm never too low.
absolutely,
So like
yeah,
you'll see me and I'm be pretty even. But I mean that's just me, right? Like
yeah, yeah,
I love being present and I like, you know, where everything is. Like everything is at peace when I'm that way.
yeah,
Um but yeah,
absolutely.
so thank you again for taking the time.
Thank you.
Andy Lerma, you can catch him. He's at Netflix and he's doing a lot of great work. And thank you for sharing your story. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for checking out Creative Leadership with Heart. Just make sure you like and subscribe if you enjoyed the episode. We have a lot more content coming out. So if you do subscribe, you'll get notified when we have new episodes. All right, take it easy. See you in the next one.